the show that explores a variety of topics and timely issues for making successful mid to late career transitions with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment for the next phase of your career and life, regardless of your age. Now, here's your host, Lisa Downs.
Welcome to Reigniting You, where we talk all things career transition for those age 40 plus. I'm Lisa Downs, Seattle area career and retirement transition coach. Happy to be here with you and our producer, Eric. Hey, Eric.
Good afternoon, Lisa.
So we have our next guest interview today, all the way from Big D, Dallas, Texas.
All right.
Excellent. Yeah, should be fun. My guest today is Sue Mintz of Retirementhood, who's here to talk with me about planning for the non-financial aspects of retirement and to share her career transition story. I'll introduce Sue right after this break. Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making mid to late career transitions. Thank you to our sponsor, FranNet, your franchise experts. Very happy to introduce our guest today, Sue Mintz. During Sue's career at a Fortune 500 company, she excelled in leadership development training and corporate communications. After retiring, Sue became a certified retirement transition coach. Though she is not a financial advisor, she offers guidance to recent or soon-to-be retirees by planning for their new lifestyle. What they have done for years will no longer be part of their daily structure, purpose, and identity. So now what will they do to feel purposeful, healthy, stay engaged with others, and fulfilled during this new phase of life? And Sue and her clients put this type of plan together. Hi, Sue. Welcome to the show. So glad that you're here.
Hey, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. So great to talk with you. And so, Sue, you and I know each other because we do similar work, and we're both members of the Retirement Coaches Association. So you and I are colleagues. And though not, I don't consider us competitors. I always go in with, we're here to support each other as coaches as well. We know there's a lot of work to go around, right? So glad that you're here. And I'm very curious about what I always like to ask our guests to start is to share their career path that's really led you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thank you, Lisa. So there's word on the street that your career starts when you're a child, and I'm a testament to that. Actually, I started my career as a teacher on the block with all the kids, and I loved that. And so it wasn't too difficult for me when it was time to select my major in college to select my major, which was special education. And I taught school for several years. And after, maybe about 6 or 7 years, I think it was, I decided I'm not really sure that this is for me. So I went to a career coach like you, Lisa, and she had me complete an assessment to determine where my strengths were and where she thought I would need to take a look. So the assessment came back and it showed that I was very service oriented and I would be a good candidate for some sort of a customer service position. So during the summer when I wasn't working and teaching school, I looked for a job in customer service. I found one in a technology company here in Dallas. And I was there as a customer service rep for several years and then promoted to supervisor. And I loved that job. However, one day I was driving down the highway in Dallas and I saw a billboard that said, how would you like to drive a car and talk on the phone at the same time? And I'm like, really? What is that all about? So I actually did some research on that company and found that it was a very new trend coming to Dallas, mobile phones, cellular phones, if you will, and it fascinated me. And I called the customer service director and asked him if there was any positions open that I would be very interested in talking to him about this new technology and perhaps working in their customer service department. And I was hired as a customer service manager. And I did that for years. In fact, I stayed in that mobility cellular space for the rest of my career.
Oh, wow.
Not with that company necessarily, but I went through several mergers and acquisitions with companies that acquired them and then acquired, just a lot of different mergers and acquisitions along the way, a lot of changes. And I ended up working for AT&T on their mobility side.
Cool.
And during my career, both at the wireless company and my first wireless job, and throughout, I started doing training.
Mm.
And I was a professional development trainer, and then I did a lot of work in the communication space, and then I did a gig. Actually, it was my favorite part of my job. I was doing leadership development training on a national training team for AT&T. So that was fabulous.
That's
And
great.
again,
Yeah.
lots of changes going
Lots
on.
of change. Yeah, absolutely. And and you and I have a lot in common, just our paths. It's like I started out after I left radio initially, went into education, teaching, and
Yes.
also worked in telecom here for T-Mobile for a while and did leadership and manager development. So, and I'm curious about for you, a couple of lessons that you learned along the way.
Sure. A couple of lessons I learned was, first of all, like you say, finding what reignites you. I always say finding what lights you up.
Mhm.
What's going to really light you up? And we have gifts and we have talents. And I think it's important for us to recognize what those gifts and talents are and use those to serve others. And the bottom line is that you have to chart your own course.
Yeah.
Nobody will take you and put you in the position that you love forever and ever. And I just think it's really important and how you do that, I think, is to develop meaningful relationships with managers, your peers, find a mentor, and talk to other people. I mean, definitely there's going to be people that will want to help you propel into whatever it is you want to propel into. However, there could be people that might get in the way and might not take you where you'd like to go. And my advice there is just to move around them, and again, continue to learn, continue to show who you are and promote your brand, and don't let anybody get in your way, and just keep developing yourself to where you want to go, and let people know where you want to go so they can help you along the way.
That's great. And yeah, and yeah, that point about, don't let it stop you, right? So we're in the driver's seats of our careers.
Exactly.
And yeah, as you hit those roadblocks or barriers, try to work through them. And then, if it doesn't go that route, just don't let it hinder you, right? And
Exactly.
interfere with your career progression. And I'm
Exactly.
also curious about, in addition to that advice and mentors, what was particularly helpful for you that got you through all those different transitions you had and those times of change?
Yes, well, as part of my curriculum that I delivered change management, how to adapt to change, and how to help others adapt to change. And actually, I took some of those skills myself and applied them in work scenarios as well as real life scenarios. Understanding that change it's a process,
Mhm.
and there's really no one I know that likes change other than babies with wet diapers. So sometimes it's really difficult to accept change.
Yeah.
However, what we we typically sometimes go to the dark side when we think of it as a loss and not necessarily as a gain. And it really helps to talk to people perhaps that have gone through similar changes, and talk to them how they navigated through the changes, and talk to friends, family members. And it's not always easy, but in the end, I found that a lot of times we look back on a change and we look at it as a gift rather than a lump of coal.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important just to understand that it's a process, and not everyone goes through change at the same pace. That's one thing that I've really learned.
That's great. Yeah, and so true. And often I think about, when we kind of get hung up with change, that it can be often due to that we either can't really see the vision of where we're headed, or, perhaps we're very comfy in status quo. So, wearing that warm, fuzzy blanket around us, or sometimes we just don't know what to do first. Has that also been your experience?
It has, and I think like you hit it on the nail. You hit the nail on the head when you said we get in our comfort zone with our warm fuzzies, and it's really, really difficult. And I think it's okay to ask questions. I think that's one thing that I've learned too, is it's perfectly okay to ask questions to whoever it is that is delivering the change. And perhaps they may not know the answer. And
Mhm.
that's oftentimes the case as well. And just to be patient and just go through it as you would. I mean, we don't want to go to pity if somebody's having a difficult time. We don't want to live in what we call pity city for a long time, but do need to find out, what it is that can propel us out of the change and get us moving to the right direction.
Love that phrase, "pity city." That's a good one.
Yeah. Well,
That's a great phrase. Yeah, but so true. Yeah, so
sometimes
true.
they automatically go to pity city. They look at it as a loss,
Yeah,
and it's not always a loss, even though some changes are definitely losses and they're
sure.
very difficult to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. Well, thanks so much, Sue, for sharing your career story and your lessons learned and your path and what's been helpful for you and that piece around change and how we deal with that. Really appreciate that.
Of
And
course.
it's time now for our next break. So when we come back, Sue and I will get into the benefits of and more of planning for the non-financial aspects of retirement right after this. Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that discusses timely issues and topics about career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. We're here with Sue Mintz of Retirementhood in Dallas, Texas. Sue, so let's go ahead and dive back into our conversation. And as we both know, much of the focus of preparing for retirement can be on financial and aspects and estate planning. And so, what would you say are some of the benefits of also planning for the lifestyle or non financial aspects of retirement?
Okay. Well, Lisa, I think we all know that the first thing we are advised of when it's time to plan for retirement is to make sure that we have a good financial plan. And that's paramount, no doubt. We've got to have the money to retire. However, having money in the bank will help you sleep at night, but it won't necessarily get you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And and so what we need to do is really think about what is it that's going to get us out of bed in the morning? What's going to give us purpose? What's going to bring actual fulfillment to us in retirement? And I look at that we need to be financially fit, obviously. But there's other ways that we need to be fit. We need to be mentally fit. We need to be physically fit, paying great attention to our health. We need to be emotionally fit, mentally fit, and spiritually fit. Now, when I say spiritually, that's not necessarily religion. It can be for
Sure.
some, not necessarily for everyone. But those are I think, the different areas of fitness that we really need to focus on when it's time to plan for the non-financial side of retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it, is that fitness level. And as you said, yeah, it's not that the financial, estate planning, the legal, aspects aren't critical. They are. And at the same time, how can we also devote more time and attention to those aspects that are really about our lives, that we're living day to day? So, yeah, really appreciate that perspective. And, with our current longevity and lifespans, we know that our retirement phase or third age can last upwards of, even 20 to 30 years. And so, how do you think people can plan for this phase of their lives in a way that's not potentially overwhelming?
Sure. Well, I think what we need to do there is really promote what you and I do as
Mhm.
retirement coaches. get out there and let people know that there is another side of retirement that needs to be focused on, and that is planning for the non-financial side of retirement. What's going to bring us purpose. There's something in our coaching, in our retirement coaching world, that we refer to as retirement success factors. And those are factors that really promote a successful retirement, adapting to a change. We look back on what it was that really satisfied us at work, our identity. We had structure, we had a social network, we were able to learn and continuous learning. And there's so much more in our brand, our brand, and all of that collapses when we retire. So I really promote the importance of, thinking about how are you going to replace those things when you retire? What's going to get you out of bed? And what's going to be your new brand? What's going to be your new identity? How are you going to structure your day? That was one thing that was very difficult for me, is when I retired, is making sure I had structure in my day, my social network. And, friends at work, you can't always call them up and go to lunch anymore.
Right.
That's just not, and also couples and families. I mean, you need to sit down and have conversations with your spouse or your significant other. There's a phrase that said, I married you for better, for worse, but not for lunch.
Yeah. I just used that joke. On last week's episode, in fact. It's always a great one.
Well, in family.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to engage the family, right? And your spouse. And because it is such a huge shift. And yeah, and with that shift, I'm wondering for you what you've seen in your work with your clients as pitfalls or common mistakes that people might make when they retire or on the verge of it as they transition into their third age that you think folks can avoid.
Sure. So one of the things I think that is a pitfall is that there's not always conversations to sit down about expectations. Like, what are expectations after I retire? What's going to change in terms of, are you going to ask me to babysit a lot? Are you going to want money from me? How are things going to be? Who's going to be dependent on me, or who's going to think that they were going to be dependent on me? But I might not want to go babysit every weekend for you. But although, spending time with grandchildren and family isn't so important in retirement. Another thing is that I look at it as someone in jail, someone that's in jail, they want to break out. Well, once they break out, then what happens? They get caught, and that's because they had a plan to break out, but they don't have a plan on what they're going to do once they get out.
Yeah.
So that's an analogy. You don't want to fail at break. I'm not saying that work is jail or your career is jail, but you have to go back to work. But it's important to have a plan once you get out. Otherwise, you can set up for failure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know, you and I are probably very aware of stories too that we see where it doesn't really matter who you are, what you do, but if you've been in a role or at an organization in a situation for a really long time, or you've got one of those professions that can be, really running on adrenaline a lot of the time where, police officer, firefighter, someone working in healthcare, when you take that away, often then it's that, well, now what are my goals, right? And I'm not here to necessarily save people anymore, have that adrenaline rush. And have you seen that?
Yes, I have. And I've also, I have a friend that's a nurse, and she's told me that when retirees retire, that oftentimes she sees an increase in office visits. And oftentimes the diagnosis could be depression. It could be some physical issues that they may have to check themselves into a hospital or go through some sort of physical therapy, because I think what it does is it manifests, in our body into some health issues that are very difficult to work around, and we would need help. So not having that structure, not having what we've talked about, can really lead to some physical and emotional issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And just all the more reason and importance, as you mentioned, of having that plan after you're out, right? After you've broken free. Because that can be, oh great, no alarm to set, don't have to be in meetings, whatever it is,
Yeah,
no performance reviews. And yet, as we know, there's that honeymoon phase, and then it's the okay, well now what?
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and I'm wondering too how you see our notions of retirement, what it means these days is and really knowing that the definition has changed a lot over the years, given that it's traditionally defined as withdrawing or fading away. But what have you seen in terms of how people are thinking of this phase, this third age, in terms of their retirement and this period of more flexibility in their lives?
Well, I'm seeing that there's no expiration date.
Mhm.
I think, for instance, my parents, my grandparents, there was an expiration date. When you're 65, you have to retire. Well, that's not the case anymore. I mean, there are so many people that are retiring at very young ages. I mean, 40s and 50s now. And so they have a longer time in retirement. Therefore, they need to definitely have plans on what they're going to do for the next, 40 years. Um, and then there's some that are 65 and they don't want to quit. I mean, they want to continue to work. And a lot of companies now are offering something called a phased retirement program,
Mhm.
where they allow their employees that want to continue to work in a phased out program, maybe X amount of hours this year, next year, maybe less, until they do want to retire. More and more people are, when they do retire, they go into another career. They do things like, you and I are doing.
Yeah.
They go in perhaps into franchising. They go into part-time gigs. I mean, there's so much volunteering going on, which is beautiful, because after retirement is definitely a time to give back. And I
Yeah.
think so many people find that their new purpose is giving back. And volunteering is definitely, skyrocketing. And
Yeah.
there's so many things. But more and more, again, more and more retirees are, I think, doing a lot of things to promote their health. We've got so many more opportunities to promote our health, to stay socially engaged, although that's not so easy, during the pandemic. But I think that we've found a lot of great workarounds
We have.
where we can stay engaged. So I just think that, yeah, it's definitely different than it was, when I was growing up and looking at my parents and my grandparents. And I think it's wonderful. And I think it's a lot of it is just because we have so many more opportunities out there, and people have the energy and the determination to want to continue to live longer and thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw too, it was really cool. So you mentioned franchising and FranNet's one of our sponsors here of the show. And I was reading a profile of one of their clients on their website, and it was a guy who's age 65 and started a house painting franchise at age
Really.
65. And
Yep.
it just totally dispels, yeah, this notion of, well, I'm done, I'm at a certain age, so now I'm done or I have to, go right off into the sunset, and I just thought that was so cool
It
and
is.
so great to hear and such an inspiration for yeah, it's like, it doesn't mean I'm done. I'm not done by any means, so,
No, 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 no,
yeah,
not at all.
really
Not.
cool. And so, Sue, so how can people find you, if they want to get in touch?
Okay, well, like you said, I'm in Dallas, and I have a website. It's www.retirementhood.com, or you can reach me at Sue Mintz, that's all together, SUEMINTZ, at retirementhood.com. Or if you want to give me a call, I'll give you my number. It's 214-676-1888.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sue. Thanks for being here.
Oh,
Really fun. Great to have you here. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your career transition journey. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And wish you the best too for the rest of your 2020, such as it is this year.
thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we close today's show, we have my reignition recommendation for you, your tip of the week. And that is to be bold and share your career situation with people you know, like, and trust. So, whether you're looking to make a job or career change, enter your third age, or embark on a new path, or just get ideas for what to do next, you never know what golden nugget of information will fall into your lap that sets you off on your next adventure. Thanks, Eric, for your support today, as always. Thoughts on what Sue shared today?
Just great advice all around.
Yeah, I think so. So excellent advice. Thanks again, Sue. Thanks, everyone. Join us next Wednesday at 3 o'clock when it's time once again for our Best Job, Worst Job episode with listener stories and career tips. And as a reminder, share your story at reignitingyou@gmail.com or call 360-436-6496 to leave a voicemail with your first name and location to share it over audio. That's 360-436-6496. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week on Reigniting You.